Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Let me start with a quote from Mrs. Thatcher in 1998 when she told the House of Commons, "There is no way in which one can buck the market." And the pound has been in free fall, stops around tin hats, etc., etc., says markets kneel, currently trying to bounce a little, but we're at 121.68 now. Boris isn't bluffing. Every action, every appointment, every word since he entered number 10 signals the same thing. Britain is leaving the EU on the 31st of October. This is another chart from Sun Chartist, and he's talking about support at 120. So really it's a good old-fashioned sterling sell-off, the likes of which we haven't seen, well, at least until the Brexit vote in 2016. But I think we're obviously going lower. That's the direction of travel in the event that Boris follows through on what he's saying. Barron's wrote an article, "The Federal Reserve should hike interest rates, not cut them," which has been my prognosis too in a number of articles. The Fed could be delivering yet another sugar high to the economy that doesn't address underlying structural problems created by powerful demographic forces that are constraining output and depressing prices. By almost every measure, policymakers should be considering another rate hike, not a rate cut. The Fed's current policy of anticipatory and preemptive rate cuts likely will lead to unsustainably high asset prices and increased financial instability. This can only make the next downturn worse. If the US continues down the current policy path, we will find that the Fed's cure for avoiding a near-term recession and negative interest rates may ultimately make the disease worse. I couldn't agree more. 3rd of June, I wrote an article, "Bond Yields in Tilt Mode." In the same article, I was saying there's a correlation that has exerted a pull effect on US yields, and that therefore the recessionary signaling of the yield curve should be discounted. And then 24th of June, Wizard of Oz World, and I said if you were to look at the US economy in isolation, you'd have to say such a forecast is absurd. The economy has some soft spots, but unemployment is at multi-decade lows and consumer spending holding up. In that same article, I described where we were in the money markets in particular as nosebleed territory and voodoo economics. And I said just because we've not reached the point when the curtain was lifted in The Wizard of Oz, and the wizard revealed to be an ordinary conman from Omaha who has been using elaborate magic tricks and props to make himself seem great and powerful, should not lull us into a false sense of security. This is the 2-year bond yield. This is from Simple Trends, and I, for one, think this is overcooked on any orthodox monetary policy basis. 15th of July, I said the US rate cut in 3 weeks is a racing certainty. And interestingly, the dollar index is a whisker away from taking out the high of April and May this year and has risen to the highest level since May 2017. A quarter-point rate hike will probably send it higher. Home Thoughts, Mark Rothko, sought to make paintings that would bring people to tears. I'm interested only in expressing basic human emotions, tragedy, ecstasy, doom, and so on, he declared. And the fact that a lot of people break down and cry when confronted with my pictures, shows that I can communicate those basic human emotions. If you are moved only by their color relationships, then you miss the point. Mark Rothko, number 37, number 19, Slate Blue and Brown on Plum, that's from 1958, and this from 1968, Mark Rothko, Untitled. This untitled painting on paper with its incendiary orange ground supporting a lighter yellow-orange rectangle and a fiery red rectangle attests to his sophisticated understanding of color and composition. A painting is not a picture of an experience, but is the experience, he said. Lovely article by The Horse Cure in The Spectator, Memories of My Childhood in Samburu. My best friend Damayon went off to join the Warrior Age set. I never saw him again. With Damayon, I first saw Samburu dance when youths swayed in snaking lines, each warrior joining the rhythmic chorus, his jaw crushing down into his throat to emit the grunt of a lion, stretching his chin skywards to roar like a bull, every dancer in turn separating from the line suddenly to leap high into the air on rigid legs, landing on the dry earth with a stamp, a cloud of dust, before the line absorbed him and another dancer came forward. Political reflections, dark side of the moon. South Korea besieged as China, Japan, North Korea and Russia put the boot in. Moon Jae-in's foreign policy implodes. A domestic proverb calls Korea long nestled uneasily between the larger Northeast Asian powers of China, Japan and Russia, a shrimp between whales, and warns that when whales fight, shrimps are crushed. The ancient fear is coming home to roost once more as South faces soaring risk across multiple geographic and sectoral fault lines. On the economic front, there is an unprecedented pressure from Japan. On the security front, China and Russia are acting in unprecedented concert in Korean skies. Meanwhile, the centerpiece of President Moon Jae-in's efforts, engagement with North Korea, is imploding. It is a stark turnaround. A mere year ago, Moon was being hailed for his sure-footedness in walking a tightrope between competing interests and powerful neighbors. He looks considerably less adroit now. In April last year, he was being visited by Kim Yo-jong, who said, "I wish I could see you in Pyongyang at an early date." And things since then have fallen apart. What has happened in Hong Kong recently has gone far beyond the scope of peaceful march and demonstration, undermined Hong Kong's prosperity and stability, and touched on the bottom line of the principle of one country, two systems, Yang said. No civilized society under the rule of law would ever allow acts of violence to take place. This is the periphery about which I've spoken before, characterized as a tinderbox, but it's a continuum. On one side you have Xinjiang, which has clearly worked, but that's because it is a black box. You have Taiwan, and then you have Hong Kong. Washington's no-holds-barred use of pressure on China is untenable, said Wang. Then the IRGC have released this footage.
British warship Foxtrot 236, channel 74, over.
British warship Foxtrot 236, this is Sepalevi patrol boat. You are required not to interfere in this issue. Over.
Saharan Navy patrol vessel.
Of comment between themselves and the Royal Navy, "You're ordered not to interfere in my operation, don't put your life in danger." And as I said in May, the Iranians will surely manage to shutter the Straits of Hormuz even after an asymmetric fashion. That is exactly what I was talking about. Euro dollar 111.34, dollar index 98.17, Japanese yen 108.68, Swiss franc 0.9909. The pound had another roller coaster day, getting as low as 121.11, and now it's 121.75. The Australian dollar is below 69, I believe, 68.95, India rupee 68.76, South Korean won 1181.78, and the numbers out of South Korea very poor. Brazilian real 378.14, Egyptian pound 16.589, and South African rand 14.1468. Dollar index, this is a chart from Simple Trends, and in fact it looks like quarter point will be bullish for the dollar. Euro dollar, we're hanging in there just above that key level of 111. We were pushed higher because of the weakness in sterling. So let's see how this plays out now. Gold, 1425.48, near the year's highs, which are about 1444. Crude oil, $57.25. A lot of people seem to feel this is an important area, one way or the other. My article over the weekend was about Africa. I gave the description from the IMF's WEO economic outlook. But I said the single paragraph does not tell the story, because this year in 2019, so much has gone on. And I started with the geopolitical and political dimension. A significant advance and intrusion by middle powers into the Horn of Africa. The Oud Spring in Khartoum met a red in tooth and claw counter-revolution, and Sudan feels like an African fault line. Somewhat counterintuitive, but it is the Al-Sisi model. Interestingly, Ahmed was meeting with him yesterday, which is delivering economic growth of 6%. But I, for one, think it's impossible to replicate, because the cry for political freedom is relentless and at a fever pitch. America, I said, feels detached. China is certainly more cautious around its BRI loan book. Russia has reasserted itself with its unique bag of tricks, elections, weapons, and cash, particularly where there are resources available for swapping. At a more granular level, Zimbabwe is a laboratory experiment with inflation clocking 176%. Centrifugal forces are working against the mercurial Prime Minister Abiy's agenda in Ethiopia. French-speaking countries like Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal are in a sweet spot, in large part precisely because of the stability of the euro anchor, and at which very moment they're considering dumping it. Tshisekedi in the Congo continues to build momentum from a low base, talking about East Africa's infrastructure model and the fact that the main creditors become a lot more cautious. And the proof of Magafulinomics will be in the eating, and surely we will know whether the cake it is baking is a growing one or a shrinking one. I said the overarching, and interestingly, at a time when the rest of the world seems to be embarked on a process of fragmentation and globalization coming apart at the seams, Africa's proudly moving counter-trend with the African Continental Free Trade Area. Saying balance sheets are fully loaded, referenced the Fitch ratings, revising its outlook on South Africa to negative, though it remains BB+. Spoke about a deteriorating ratings trend line, not just in South Africa, but in other countries. And the fact that negative interest rates meant that the positive interest rates look high and handsome in the current environment, but saying that elastic band will snap. 4 students were shot dead at a Sudan protest. Malawi's Tipp-Ex President Mutharika faces High Court challenge. It has been 2 months since Malawi's Peter Mutharika was sworn in after winning an election that earned him the nickname Tipp-Ex President. The jibe is a reference to the correction fluid that the opposition claims was used to alter results with a vote that gave the 79-year-old former law professor a second term. Malawi's High Court is now being asked by 2 disappointed challengers to scrub out the outcome and order a rerun. Since Malawi ended one-party rule in 1994, a country of 18 million people has gained a reputation for regular multi-party elections and smooth transitions of power. Young people have marched through the streets of Lilongwe and Blantyre, blocking roads with rocks and burning tyres. Government buildings and politicians' homes have been torched. Malawi is burning, said Joyce Banda, former president. What is happening is unprecedented. Then talking about the Kenyan decision, any rerun would need comprehensive electoral reforms to be credible. The crisis has sparked volatility in the Kwacha, stagnation of an already fragile economy. Lazarus Chakwera came second in the vote, said he had sought to rein in violence. I said, let us not destroy our parliament. We will need it tomorrow. Coups are not cool.